Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of SuperCoach TV, KFC SuperCoach TV, of course. I'm Paton. We've got the two Dans here, Dan Batten and Dan Begala, and we're going to talk some SuperCoach. We've got another round starting. It sort of only feels like I haven't really recovered from last weekend yet, but we have to get our teams in, and there'll be a game tonight. The Bulldogs and the Swans kick off round 4, I think we're up to. It's getting a bit confusing. But yeah, plenty to talk about, lots of trades. We're just talking about captaincies, actually quite an interesting discussion this week. But off the top, guys, we should let everybody know that some rules have been officially announced for the situation that we find ourselves in with the Essendon Melbourne game being postponed. Obviously, last week, SuperCoach had to make a call on pretty short notice when that happened in the middle of a round. Not ideal. There was a lot of phone calls and emails flying around, and the solution that was settled on for last weekend was to revert to best 18 scoring, which is what we're sort of used to doing during the buys. Given that we had one less game, so a lot of people had players unavailable. I certainly had plenty of those. I think Dan Begala, you were certainly in the same boat. So that sort of helped us get through last weekend, and now we've settled on what happens when Melbourne and Essendon play again, which we think will be sometime later in the year. Not sure exactly when, but so we have something prepared so people know what's happening and can plan their trades and that around it. And that is, in short, that if players play 2 games in one round, so effectively whenever that game is played, we'll assign it to the nearest round. So if it's, say, on a Wednesday night before round 11 starts on the Thursday or the Friday, we'll make it part of round 11. But anybody who plays twice, and if you've got them in your SuperCoach team, you will get their highest score. So if you've got Max Gawn and he scores 95 on the Wednesday and then he backs up on the Sunday night and scores 150, you get the higher of the 2 scores. So I think that, in my view, I think it's a good solution because it's a way of I guess, compensating a bit for people who missed out last weekend. I certainly had a heap of Melbourne players who didn't play, so I'll get a little bit of an advantage, especially, if I've got Harley Bennell in my team and he scores 30 in one game and 80 in the other game, you're going to get the 80. So it kind of wipes out, hopefully, those real bad scores. But it's not totally changing the game by, giving you 2 Max Gawn scores for the one weekend and you end up having 30 scoring players in your team and everybody just spends from now until then trying to get as many Melbourne players in their teams as possible. So I think it's a pretty decent compromise given the tricky circumstances we find ourselves in.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, Melbourne and Don's owners will feel a little bit hard done by. May have cost them, potentially 100, 200 points over the weekend. But ultimately, it was sort of out of everyone's control. And the thing that you don't want happening is people just jumping on Petrarca, Gawn, Oliver, Zach Merritt, every single Dons and Melbourne player, in the hope of getting more points. And, one of the best parts of SuperCoach is having those sort of unique picks. And if everyone's just jumping on those players and getting advantage over, I guess, an unprecedented score of having 2 scores in the 1 week, then, yeah, I think it's probably the right call has been made.
And yeah, my thought was just that we want to try and keep, given that, it's a very unusual season, obviously, and we're trying to navigate it as best we can, but trying to keep SuperCoach kind of as normal as possible, close as we can to a normal year. So we didn't want to have heaps of extra trades every week or anything like that. And yeah, I mean, in that situation you're talking about, what if we don't even know when that game is, but say it's at round 10, gives you, 5 weeks to use 2 trades every week to get Melbourne, as many Melbourne players as you can, or Essendon as well, obviously. So then everybody just throws their normal trading strategy out the window. And then once that game's over, all of a sudden you've got a team full of Melbourne Essendon players and you've got to try and get them out. And it just sort of ruins the whole season. And it's only round 3. And unfortunately, given what's happened, it's probably, well, I mean, who knows? But it's every chance that it could happen again. In 3 weeks, it could be, Richmond and GWS that don't play. And then you've got the same situation happening over again. So we wanted something that, as I say, won't totally blow up the game and that we can, now that's out there, everyone knows what the rules are. If that happens again midweek, we find out, or during a round again, everybody knows that's what the rule is. So I think that's probably as important as anything. How do you feel about the solution, Daniel? I know you copped it like me. We had Gawn in the ruck and a few Melbourne guys.
I still feel a little bit disadvantaged, and there's no way to sort of sugarcoat that. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to back my team to improve. It was probably one of the worst performances I've had in the history of playing this great game in the last 10 years. But, yeah, I think it was just one of those weeks. It won't be a once-off. I suspect it will be something that might happen again before season's end. That's just basic probabilities. We had 33 cases in Victoria today, so good luck avoiding it in lockdown to some of these AFL players. Yeah, I think it's probably a good strategy, I guess. I feel still a little bit hard done by in that I'll only get the betterment of Gawn, who will likely go 140 and 150, so it's a 10-point increase. It's not that marginal for my side. But look, it probably circumvents everyone jumping on those players, so I'll still get to have the benefit of Gawn for the majority of the year, hopefully, because he'll be too expensive for most pundits to actually acquire. So he'll continue to pump those scores out. But look, on the weekend, I think I was only net 200 points from where I thought I should have been, and that was because I had Pitt net covering Gawn so well with 137. But look, it's one of those years where, look, if you saw me on Saturday about 4:30 when I was watching Guild, I was dire straits. I was hurting, and I knew something like this was on its way. But look, found a way through it, and I think we'll all have to bounce back and just try our best, because this year's going to be one of those really, really out of the box type solutions, and no cookie cutter approach is ever going to work this year. So do the best with what you presented, and unfortunately that week happened to hurt me a lot. But maybe the next time something like this happens, maybe I get up unscathed. It's sort of the way these things happen, and hopefully it does like that for me, because I got whacked like you, Al, pretty hard.
Yeah, we both did. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's right. If it happens next time and it's everybody who's got Pitt and A, Carlton misses out, maybe I'll get some back, because that was a big area where having Pitt and A's cover for Gawn was such a huge bonus. And as we've discussed, I nearly made that trade but didn't do it. So I just got the big fat zero there. But no perfect solution. But I think judging by the feedback out there, I think most people are pretty understanding that it's a tough situation, and we're trying to do the best we can to keep it as fair as we can for everybody. We won't talk about this too much longer. There's some other news around today. We've learnt some more fixture matchups for round 6 and 7 is on the Herald Sun website. John Ralph's got some info on that. So that's sort of really helpful for trying to plan where we're going to go with trades and things like that. Probably the one that certainly I jumped to straight away, and I think a lot of super coaches would, is who's GWS playing, who's Matt DeBoer going to be facing up against. And in round 6, he's got Port Adelaide, so maybe Travis Boak.
Yeah.
And then round 7, the Tigers at the MCG, so the grand final rematch. So possibly Dustin Martin, although he hasn't played on him the last couple of times. He's gone to Dion Prestia, but that didn't really work too well in the grand final. So maybe they'll go back to Dusty. Although hopefully, if Dusty's over the sore ribs by then, he'll be able to maybe just go down the goal square and kick a bag. So that's definitely interesting. I mean, Lachie Neale's another one that I'm thinking, geez, do I trade him in this week when he's worth such a humongous amount of money? He's got this fantastic run at the Gabba. But then in round 6, he's going to have to come down to the MCG and play Collingwood. Don't traditionally tag, really, do they, the Pies? So
no, not really.
Might not hurt him too much. And then round 7, he's got Sydney at the SCG. So
maybe
Georgie Hewitt.
I looked up Georgie Hewitt. He didn't play last week. Is he just
no, he did. I thought he played. He was on the back flank or down the back line when I saw him. But he hasn't been doing those lockdown roles like he was over the last few years. So maybe a new role, but I was pretty certain he was playing. Let me just check that.
At one stage he was out, I think. But yeah, it's
only tagging 3 games. Yeah, okay. He must have missed some of the earlier rounds.
Tagging has gone out of fashion, although. So yeah, that's why I am tempted to jump on Lachie Neale now. He could go back-to-back 150, 160s against Power, who don't really who let Fife run free last week, and then also Adelaide, who just look like an absolute rabble at the moment. So I'm I'm sort of playing with the short term versus the long term. Short term obviously being just getting Lachie Neale, having that security, feeling safe on a Saturday and not having to worry about him running around everywhere. And versus the long term, which I guess is maybe getting a Petrarca or a Simpkin and investing that cash later, but missing out on those points now. So I think that's one of the biggest questions facing, particularly those who have a Josh Dunkley.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still wrestling with that. I mean, Dan, you're the investor. Has your thoughts sort of changed on this? We talked about it a bit on the podcast earlier in the week that, as Dan said, it's like the trade-off between you just get the points now and then you just don't have to worry about it, but you're forking out, a huge amount of money, or are you better off to find a bit of value with your trades now? And, that might allow you to upgrade rookies earlier. And overall, your sort of team, you're going to be in a better spot, but it might take you a few weeks to catch up to, people who are just cashing in on Neale's huge scores.
Yeah, as I said this week in the article, I said that there lies a lot more benefit and upside in the forward line. Like of the top 10, 7 of them are priced less than 500 grand versus the defence. And I think Lachie Neale is at the top end of the price scale. Like he could go more, there's no doubt about that. But hopefully he does suffer from the effects of a tag at some stage, because it worked when they tagged him last year. They sort of slowed the Brisbane juggernaut down. But I think coaches are still a little bit slow to make these decisions sometimes. But in my opinion, I think like I'd rather focus on picking up the likes of Simpkin, Petrarca. I know they're still somewhat unproven to many of the punters out there, but in my opinion, Petrarca, like we're lucky to see him at 470 grand again. He's on a tear at the moment. He looks so good. The game is perfectly suited to his game style, and he looked a majestic beast against Carlton. He looked so good in that game. I was just stunned how good he looked. So for mine, I think I'd focus on getting those cheaper, underpriced players. And Simpkin is still underpriced. Like he's 500 grand on the knot, or sorry, just below, about 580 grand or something. And I still think he's a better solution than chasing after the points of Neil. Like if it means you can get someone like Curtis Taylor off the ground, there's like 60, 70 points worth of upside on that front. Whereas like if you've got Matt Rowell running around, Marley and Pickett, the young buck from Collingwood, Tyler Brown, there's still some sort of decent rookies going there. So I feel like the forward line for me was a bust last week. King scored 50, Curtis Taylor scored 44, and a few of the other fellas just didn't score like I would have liked. Obviously, Whitfield scored 7, but we'll probably all dodge that. But for me, I really like Petrarca. I just think he's 300 grand or 250 grand less than Neil, and he's scoring 115s. He's in the top 4 amongst the forwards, and for me, I just think it's an absolute steal. And we've had 2 games out of him, and both of them were absolutely spectacular. Even in that loss against West Coast, he came back better. Against Carlton, he looked fantastic.
So a few of these guys. Oh, sorry, Dan. I was just going to say that the Petrarca, Simpkin types, Bailey Smith from the Dogs is another one you could throw in all around that same price, 500k. Yeah, Wingard too. They're all mid forward. So would you be against trading, say, a Dunkley to a Simpkin or a Petrarca in the midfield?
Well, I guess what you're chasing here is prices and break-evens. So I feel like if you're going to get him and you're picking him at a great price now, and then eventually in 2 weeks' time you can shift him down to the forward line and you're still filling that top 6 and you still think he'll be in the top 6, I think it's a good decision. He's scoring really well. He's averaging 125, as we can see on the screen right now. So if it does mean you can get someone at a great discounted price, I'd always prefer that over paying overs for Lachie Neale, who like effectively could cop a tag and his BE could go from being 40, 50, 60 to 180 in the space of one game. So you will, I guess with Neale, there are points and there are things you've got to consider. But like, I just think that for me, I'm all chasing value. I want to get that team as quickly equipped with 22 starting guns, irrespective of their lines, and just get them into my side. And it did hurt not having Neale last year, but I mean, I still managed to push my way into the top 1,000 or so doing so. But yeah, geez, you are going to forego a lot of points. So it comes down to A, are you chasing overall ranking, or B, are you looking to beat your mates in leagues? So if it's leagues, then maybe Neale's not the end of the world, but I'm focused on Simpkin and Petrarca if I can make it happen. And it's all going to come down to whether Lachie Whitfield is selected tonight. I'm sort of hoping not, so I can just move him on and avoid that price crash and get those boys into my side.
Dan, you're going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say I agree with Dan on going Petrarca over Simpkin, just because I guess Petrarca he has been hyped for the past few years, but he does have those few more pre-seasons under his belt, and yeah, I reckon in that game against Carlton he was pretty stiff. He had a bit of a quiet last quarter. He could have easily scored 150. He was kicked a couple of goals. He's laying tackles. He's hasn't got as much mid-time. I don't think as Simpkin, just marginally, but I still think Petrarca's a better option, especially in these shortened quarters. But yeah, as you said, Al, Bailey Smith is another one definitely to consider, especially as a forward mid, as well as Jai Simpkin, because with Dunkley's injury, you'd think that Bailey Smith gets a bit more centre bounce action now, and his midfield time's already skyrocketed. So yeah, you could get onto the man with the big mullet.
The very big mullet, yeah. I mean, the other thing that we normally try and do when is try and pick off midfielders, especially, or players who've dropped in value that we think are, a bit of a fallen primo. And it might be a bit early to really do that, but someone like a Bont or a Jack McRae maybe is, Bont still hasn't scored over 100, so he'd be a little bit nervous going there. But McRae he hasn't come down heaps, but he's a bit cheaper than he was at the start of the season, and he just looks like, he was really good last week, and now with Dunkley out, surely he gets heaps more midfield, centre bounces, and he would just be that sort of consistent 130 a week type player. So would you look at someone like him potentially?
Yeah, I think you have him, don't you, Al, McRae?
No, I don't, no.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I think he's certainly one to look at. Maybe not this week, but I guess once we see his role without Dunkley in, and with a break even at 130 as well, I think you can afford to wait a week on him. But obviously we know he's such a safe bet over the past 2 years, just consistently averaging over that 123, 124 sort of mark. So yeah, that's one I'm definitely looking at. That's why I am sort of thinking, I think Dan sort of swayed me with his argument with getting a Christian Petrarca or a Simpkin over Lockie Neal and locking in those points immediately. Yeah, that you could and you end up getting McRae for close to 600,000, and who knows, in 5 or 6 weeks, if Neal slips up and has a bad game or gets tagged, then they might be facing it, or it might be around the same price.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Lockie Neal is, 2020, who knows, like we sort of throw a lot of things out the window, but nobody has ever scored like Lockie Neal is scoring right now for a whole SuperCoach season. Like he's averaging over 160. The highest average ever is certainly around the 130 mark. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, I think it's very out of danger.
Yeah, those guys sort of average 132, that kind of thing. So, like for Neal to continue scoring the way he is now is completely unprecedented. So you would have to assume at some stage he's going to, drop back to the pack a bit. But then again, he plays Adelaide this week, as you say, Dan. They're, total rabble. They gave up about 140 something points to Matt Rowell last week. So who knows what Lockie Neal will do to them. So that's the part that makes it really hard to pass on him. So yeah, it's a really interesting debate this week. The other one that Tim is not with us, but one of his favourites that he's thrown up is Andy McGrath at Essendon. So some of those Bombers and maybe Melbourne have been under the radar a little bit because they didn't play last week. But McGrath scored over 100 in his 2 games. He's probably the big selling point on him is his 426k. So he's sort of 60 grand cheaper than those Petrarca Simpkin types. And he does seem to be, I think I saw a stat today in the Champions Data Form guide that we've got on the site that he's playing 98% midfield. I sort of thought before the start of the year, I was wary of going there thinking, like, I can really see him averaging, 90 as opposed to 70 last year. But, 105 definitely looks a possibility now.
Yeah, I don't mind him. I think he's known, and Job talked about him last week or the week before. He's known for his speed, his lateral movement, his agility. He brings some X factor to that midfield, and he's a very classy ball user. I've got Viney. So Viney's already that cheapie that I brought into my side, and he'll appreciate to hopefully 600 grand in the next coming weeks. But the main one I really like that you brought to the attention of everyone is obviously Jack McRae. Dunkley goes out. Obviously, Bailey Smith will benefit, but the main person that will benefit from that will likely be McRae. He should go in and restore his old role. And as we know, I think you'll be able to pick a player that will score akin to Lockie Neal from this point onwards if this comes to fruition. And again, you're buying him at 150, 160k less than where Lockie's going to be sitting, and he could score roughly on par with him. But with regards to McGrath, a lot of people love him. I'm sort of not going to take another punt at someone at 420 grand again. I'd rather just fill my forward line because I feel like there's so much volatility in the rookies out there. They just score so good one week, and then obviously as you saw on the weekend with Sam Sturt pumping out an 11 and Curtis Taylor pretty much unsighted for the first half. So those 44s and 30s need to be removed from our side as soon as possible, and I guess the quickest way to do so is to get these primos in. And Simpkin, we've seen 3 games, all of them have been sublime. That one on the weekend, he looked like Elliot Yeo. I just looked at this kid and it reminds me of Elliot Yeo the way he plays, and he's very explosive and he's good with the contested side of the game too. So I like him, and I was definitely not sold on him. And then Petrarca, I still remember that moment. He took the ball in the air against Carlton, contested mark, hit the ground and started sprinting. So I was like, guys on another planet this year. And I think we've got to get them in ASAP. Otherwise, they're going to have 2 young bucks that are running around at 550, 560k that we won't be able to afford, and we would have foregone too many points.
So do we think Simpkin is the real deal after, so it's 3 games, not a huge sample size. We saw Aaron Hall do this a few years ago. Yep. 3 games, but he seems to be definitely getting the midfield role. He's had a few sort of injuries in the past and played mostly as a forward, so that kind of explains why his scoring hasn't been so great in his SuperCoach history. And last week was a pretty tough game, and Kangaroos lost, so it wasn't like he was playing Adelaide or someone. Is that enough to lock him in, Dan, do you reckon?
I had the game on in one corner of my phone, and I had the stats running. I was doing the gardening because I wasn't contributing by that game, to be honest, and I just kept seeing him bobbing up, and they're talking about him exponentially on the radio. This Simpkin, just like every clearance or every tackle, and he was involved in literally everything. And centre bounce numbers never lie. The snippets I saw of him, he just looks so explosive, and he's hitting the scoreboard, which is great. So spent a lot of his career as a small forward, and now he's graduated into his sophomore period in the guts, which is fantastic. And I feel like the likes of Cunnington and even Higgins is fast, but Cunnington's a bulldozer. He doesn't move all that quick. So he's perfectly complemented by a player like Simpkin. And as we see, every time you try and stop the ruse, you tag Cunnington, lock down their best one-touch player, and then the other boys get off the leash. So I honestly reckon you'd always look to tag Cunnington, Higgins, and then Simpkin might be third in that line. So with that notion alone, he's sort of going to be immune to being tagged and getting those pretty average scores. So I don't know. Coaches are different. Like, I probably don't think he's going to get tagged in top super. I think he's the real deal. 3 games, which have included a 130 odd, is a really good start. I think there's a 140 in there as well. So for mine, I think it takes a lot of talent to score like that. And he slipped in his draft year because he snapped his leg in the draft period. So I think he's obviously clearly a talent. Probably could have gone higher up the draft, but I just think he's must-have at the moment. I think there's something about him. Him and Petrarca, both young, both lean, and both explosive players.
What about this? We'll look at some questions that people have been sending in. Nathan Lucky Devonport's just put one. Dan Batten, I'll throw this your way. I'm looking at Grundy to Pitt and then Townsend to Fife. Now, we don't talk about Fife because I traded him out a couple of weeks ago. And that was an absolutely disastrous decision, as everyone would know. I mean, would you consider downgrading a Grundy who just looks a little bit sore at the moment? He had a bit of a knock to the knee, I think, and last week, he scored 100, but it wasn't sort of the massive Grundy scores that we know he can produce. When Pitney is scoring so well, is there any kind of value to just a cash grab like that would now that's a pretty handy upgrade, Townsend to 5?
Yeah, well, Nathan's clearly feeling a bit lucky because that is quite a trade. But I actually don't mind it, considering Pitney could score that sort of 120, 100, or he's shown his 2 scores to date have been 130s. So I don't mind it, but Grundy is playing against Sam Jacobs, who I believe last time he played scored, or in the past he's scored 160s against. So yeah, I can see him absolutely beating up there in Sydney. So yeah, maybe it's a tough one, isn't it? Like, Pitney could potentially make you, I guess another 200,000 is sort of that pod rookie, because not everyone has that sort of, I guess, that flexibility at R3 or is willing to trade out a Grundy. But then, enables him to go Townsend to 5. So I guess it really depends if you do have sort of like, I guess a plan to get him back. And if you're also willing to just, I guess, sacrifice potentially some points on the field.
Well, I think it's a great move from Nathan Lucky Davenport, because when you think about it, if Pitto continues to score like he does, and I don't see that being abated, like he played against Stanley and Savarada-Galea, and he was fantastic on the weekend. I couldn't fault his game again. And then the week before, absolutely performed admirably against Max Gorm for another 130 odd. If he scores that, that's the same as what Grundy's putting out, but you're getting...
He's got Essendon this week, so...
Yeah, Bell Chambers.
Bell Chambers will probably do really well against, again, Cripps mopping up the stuff in the ground ball. So if he averages 130, there's your Grundy, because that's what Grundy's forecasted to average in seasons gone past, 125. But then instead of having Townsend running around averaging 60, you've got Nate Fife, who we saw on the weekend had 166 points with his eyes shut. So I think that is actually a great move. It's an unprecedented year that we're facing into, being as we saw on the weekend, and the game got cancelled through the cat amongst the pigeons. So if you think that Pitto could do this for 4 or 5 weeks and Grundy loses $100,000, then I actually think it's a great move. That upside you get out of Fife from Townsend is astronomical, and I think that the gap between Grundy and Pitnet might be a lot closer than people are giving Pitnet credit for. I think he's going to score 110, 115, maybe more for the rest of the season. It's all going to come down to whether they give Cruiser the heave-ho and say, look, we're going with the youth from now on. That's the way it's going to be. This guy's been reliable. But look, it's you got to have big cojones to do that move. But look, as I saw on the weekend, Grundy really struggled. Like first 5-6 centre bounces, Paddy Ryder came in and he just sat on Grundy's head because he's got that great spring. And then when Aaron, whatever his name, Rowan, he's no longer relevant in Supercoach, unfortunately. That's not his name. But when he came in, that's when Grundy made his points. He really worked him around the ground and stepped it up. But first quarter, 13 points, looked a little underdone and a little bit sore, poor old Grundy.
Just having a look at his next 2 after that. So he's got Bell Chambers, so this is Grundy. He's got Bell Chambers in round 5. Round 6, he has, a sort of a underdone, semi-injured Stephen Martin and Oscar McInerney. So that could be a couple more big scores for Grundy. So, yeah, as you said, it would take some cojones to pull off the move. But, yeah, it could certainly pay off.
And then they might be going to Perth, aren't they, for a
yeah,
which is always hard.
So just some news on there. We haven't had a heap of leaks so far on the teams, but one is that Dusty Martin's back, so that's great. And Damien Hardwick forecasted another few changes at Richmond. Liam Baker will come back in, so a few nervous about Marlon Pickett, who's been battling a little bit the last couple of weeks. So we'll wait on those teams tonight. And Collingwood, it seems like Mason Cox is going to come back in at the expense of Darcy Cameron. So I don't know what that means for Grundy. Maybe better because Cox doesn't do a lot of ruck time, does he? He's more of a forward. But, Cameron didn't do a lot last weekend.
Yeah, I think it's a straight swap, and that's what everyone sort of envisages at the moment. As we saw in that prelim against your mob in 2018, he was an absolute linchpin of that forward line. He was a linchpin against Ramsey and like. So I think there's been more time at home. And even the games that we watched with Grundy pairing with Cameron actually hasn't faced up to too many ruck contests. So it's been Grundy taking most of the workload. So I wouldn't suspect that would change with the likes of Cox coming in. But yeah, it's a tough decision that Nathan's got, but I think those sort of decisions will be the defining ones that ratchet you up the rankings or cast you into relevance. Who knows?
Back down where I am. We'll try and get through a few more quickly. Still on the rucks, Zane Atkins asking, what about Naismith? So he's back this week playing tonight for the Swans. So a couple of weeks ago, he was quite a popular thought until they ruled him out as a really cheap ruckman. I haven't got his price right in front of me. He's not
36.
He's about the same as Pitney was, 250, I think.
Yeah, that's right. So you sort of missed the boat on Pitney. I mean, my worry with Naismith would just be that he's come back from 2 years out and he only played one game and then got injured again. And Sydney does have a pretty handy backup, Callum Sinclair. So there's a few question marks over that one, I reckon.
Yep.
There's a question here which I like too.
Yeah, definitely.
It sort of, followed along the lines of, so Aiden has asked, is it bad if I trade Dunkley and Ben Long to Baz Smith and Jai Simpkins? So I'm not sure if that's an alias for Tim Mitchell because I think that's basically exactly what he's doing.
I was going to say.
Dunkley, and basically using a primo and sort of a mid-pricer who hasn't really gone anywhere to get two of those sort of 450, 500 grand players rather than, say, a Lockie Neal and then, someone cheaper. So that's definitely the road Tim's talking about going down.
Yeah, I like that move. As I said, all the underpriced value appears to be in the forward line this week. We haven't really had that meteoric decline in the established midfielders just yet. Obviously, McRae looks like a really good target. Elliot Yeo looks like a really good target, and that's about it for now. Whereas in the forward line, you've got these young stocks that are on an upward trajectory, clearly on an upward trajectory. They've shown some great signs in the first 3 weeks, and they're sub 500K. So, for me, you're getting output that's better than Dusty, better than Whitfield, on par with Walters, and you're paying sub 500 grand. There are times in your career when you've just got to take these plunges on these young bucks. And I remember Elliot Yeo a few years ago when he was a defender forward or wherever he was. I missed the boat on him and it really hurt for most of the year. And there's been a number of players like this you've just got to take the plunge on early. And we've seen enough. Simpkin is a star and Petrarca is he's going to be a Dustin Martin talent, hopefully. And he's on that way, on the upstick now. I think it's time to jump on and enjoy the spoils.
A couple of people have brought up this name too, Dan Batten. I'll throw this your way. As a former Richmond Premiership hero. Mac asking, not you, but this is who I'm going to talk to you about. Has gone Whitfield to Simpkin and then saying Long to Rivers or Dan Butler. So Butler's been brought up by a couple of people. He is 344,000. He's averaging over 100, I believe, at the moment. But could you trust him as a Supercoach pick?
Well, in our little, I think our verdicts, our expert verdicts, which is on the Herald Sun site, I said yes, to buying him. I'm not so sure now. I think I'm a bit on the fence with him, but certainly if you've got you've got no other problems elsewhere, maybe potentially a move from Whitfield to Butler isn't as stupid as it sounds. I mean, you can make 200,000 from that investment. Then, Butler, he's got a negative 45 break even, which, he's predicted to go up probably about 90, 100,000 in price. This is just a potential play for, I guess, the risky Supercoacher. You trade out Whitfield for Butler, then potentially, the two of them play, the next 2 weeks, and they could be the exact same price. You could end up downgrading Butler to Whitfield. So it's not as ridiculous as it sounds, and you certainly need to be open-minded in this year. And I guess it's a bit of a waste of a trade, or maybe wasting a bit too many trades. And I wouldn't expect him to keep this scoring up. But who knows? It's the Dan Butler Trent Noble Cup on the weekend on Saturday for Saints Richmond, so he might be fired up.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he goes against the Tigers. He's been fantastic the first few games. I think I wouldn't mind. Last year when he only came in for 1 or 2 games, he was sort of the next one cab off the rank if a Richmond player got injured, and you think he'd definitely be coming in this week if he was there, because your Dan Riolis and Castagnas and Marlon Pickett's and these sort of guys are really struggling, and he's really flying. So I'm happy for him, but I hope he has a bit of a quieter one this week. Bailey Lawson wants to know thoughts on Jager O'Meara. Scored about 140 against the Tigers last weekend. Is that something he can keep doing? I think he's got over 100 in his other game.
Oh, he's a generational talent, right? Like, he's had bad luck with his knees. He's had injury concerns, but on the weekend, I think he ran it for a big portion of that game. He was running at about 100% efficiency, so I don't think he really missed a touch. So
there wasn't a lot of pressure last week.
Well, there wasn't much pressure from the breast pressure side in the comp.
Yeah,
but I honestly think that it'd be hard to take a plunge on him. I mean, was that his first game back? I think it was.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't. I still think that I'd rather post some faith in the likes of McRae, who we'll get a quick look at this week. We'll get one more look at McRae. If he goes bonkers, you'll have to just get him in next week.
He's only 519k, O'Meara.
What was that, sorry?
He's only 519.
Yeah, he's cheap. I mean, I still would prefer to fill my midfield with the top 8, and I don't suspect he'll end up being in the top 8. I think the top 8 is going to be Lockie, it'll be McRae, it'll be Clary, Cripps, Fife. All the big dogs will be there from seasons gone past. But in the forward line, I think you've just got this distinct option this week, and it's Petrarca and Simpkin, and it's little Baslenka Smith, and they're the guys you're going to have to look at. But for me, I don't know if Jager's just relevant. He's burnt me a couple of years ago, and I'll never forget it. That's the sort of thing he came, probably played 3 games and he was injured, and that's a bit of a disappointment. But he looks good when Titch is doing the hard stuff and he's attacking the footy and creating. He looks really nice. So smooth mover, but probably wouldn't touch him at 5.15. It's a bit too risky still.
Yeah, he does have a history of missing games, which is not what you need this year of all years. A few people have asked, brought another name up, Georgie Banks, Cogs or Danger to Boak. Like Dangerfield, is he someone you would consider trading out? He's obviously been pretty underwhelming, especially those of us who brought him in a couple of weeks ago on the back of this amazing run at GMHBA Stadium. Yeah, Dan, you're in the same boat.
That's me.
I'm going to hang on to him and just, surely he turns the corner. It's not like he's injured or just playing it full forward or something. He's just butchering it a bit, and he's going to have a game where he just turns it on, I hope.
Yeah, I'm with you, Al. Especially he's playing the bottom 2 from last year, and obviously Melbourne's a better and so better sides this year, but I still think he could have a couple of big scores. Hopefully, I really hope so, because I sort of, turned my team around to get him in, and he's produced absolutely nothing thus far. So, but no, I'd back him up with Danger. I guess there's always a big score around the corner, and I think you just got to, especially if you did trade him in, you probably just got to keep the faith. And Boak may not be the best option considering he's got the ball down the track.
There's another name, Tom Doty. Who's anyone picked him up? So he was very ordinary his first game in, but then he was really good last week. A lot of intercepts. So he's still a pretty affordable price. Is that an option down back?
Yeah, I watched his game really closely. I brought him in before round 2 actually, and he hardly got near it in round 2, even though there was heaps of footy down there. But yeah, again, there was as we've said, the Crows aren't looking great, and there's certainly a lot of footy there to be had, and it was really clean with his disposal. He was taking some kick-ins as well and playing on, which was really encouraging. And I think he took about probably 3 or 4 intercept marks. And as we know, Jeremy Howe, Nick Haynes even have scored really well from intercepts this year, particularly in shortened quarters. You're looking for those scoring avenues that are going to be, I guess, really influential, and intercepts is certainly one of them. And I think at 290k, and he's still very affordable. You could certainly downgrade a really good option would be downgrading a Dan Houston, who's flopped so far, to Tom Doedee.
I think we've lost our sound here.
I'm on.
There you go.
There we go. Oh no, we got some.
We still don't have you, Al, unfortunately.
No, you can't hear me?
There we go.
So there was a question earlier about someone looking to upgrade John Noble, which I'm planning on keeping him for a bit longer, but he's not exactly producing a ton of cash. Would you go up from him to someone like a Duday or down to? So there's a question here from Matthew Murphy about a Williamson. I think Will Hamill from the Crows is the other defensive rookie this week. If you've already got Trent Rivers, which a lot of us did last week, even though he didn't play, could you trust these other defensive rookies, do you reckon?
Well, I think Williamson you can probably trust. Like, he's just had a few issues with injuries, etc. But on the weekend, he only had, 7 or 8 touches, got a 53, and he gave a pretty bad free kick against Joel Selwood directly in front of goal that ended in a goal. So I suspect that's a 60, 65er. So it's not a bad performance down at the Cattery. So for me, I think they'll try and get as many games into this young buck as they can because they really like his long left boot. Nick Newman's out, so obviously he's done for the season with a sore knee. So I think we'll have to play Williamson. I think he'll get a lot of job security and confidence out of that. But will he score? Probably not all that well. He'll probably appreciate the 300 grand. I think we've got to take that in tough times that we're in right now, COVID-19. But I'm a bit concerned that dividends you're going to get out of him aren't going to be that spectacular. So if you can fit him in at D7 or D8, you don't have to really worry about him. Go ahead and make the move. I might have to do it this week because I really want to move Houston on, and I don't have enough money to go straight from Houston to Petrarca, unfortunately. So if someone has to move, it's either Whitfield or one of my midfield rookies. It's probably done enough mooing for now.
Well, Pickett's the one we threw up earlier, but there's not really many midfield rookie options to trade him down to, is there, apart from Bennell and Rivers is defensive. So if you don't have one of those two, that could, so there's Tim's asking, do we have many decent rookies on the horizon? And, well, Isaac Rankin hopefully will play at some point.
If he makes it in their team, yeah, gee.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, actually. Not an easy team to get into, but certainly in the midfield, I don't know that there's a heap around. There's is the Bulldogs got another debutant tonight, haven't they?
Yeah. So Lewis Butler, someone in the comments has actually said he had some decent under 18 numbers, so he's averaged 104 points in that league, 67 in at the under 18 championships. So I think he's more of like a running defender. So and Matt Suckling has been axed for him. So yeah, he's in his first year. So really, I guess he's one to watch tonight. But yeah, I don't know. I think probably the next one on the horizon is maybe Stephen Hill. If he gets up this weekend, he's probably the one that you sort of lock in at maybe F4 or F5 or D5, depending where you're stacked. I'm just trying to think of
the other one. I think Caleb Sarong's been mentioned this week as a debut for Freo, but he's a bit more expensive, isn't he?
Yeah, he's probably going to be spending more time up forward as well. So yeah, you tend to avoid those guys. I guess I saw someone in the comments asking if Justin McInerney was too late to jump on. I don't mind that call, considering there aren't as many rookies available at the moment. McInerney, he's got a negative 30-odd break even. He got admitted as a late change last week, but that I don't mind that at all. Bringing him in and potentially just that low break even, it could be something that gives you a bit more cash.
Karen Loader asking here, we better wrap this up in a minute, but if you had to pick one out of Rivers and Bennell, who would you go with? I think I would take Rivers, just a bit of a safer pick given Bennell's injury history and the fact that he's a defence mid gives you a bit more flexibility and coverage where I really need it anyway. But Bennell, it's a bit of one of those risk-reward things. He's probably more of a chance to score 100 for you.
Yeah.
I
take Bennell just because that Carlton game, you play 50% of game time. You're going to have to play him at M7 or M8, so most teams would have him there. And if you need someone that will score, Bennell's going to do it. He was really good against Carlton. He's had another week to prepare, another scratch match, got through it unscathed. So the signs are positive, whereas I think Rivers will be a 60-ish type scorer most weeks. But the best thing about Rivers is I really like his dual position eligibility. It gives you flexibility to move Starchy, so Brandon Starchevich into the mids and leverage that a little bit, which is great. But they're both going to play. It's just I think that the upside on Bennell is a little bit higher at this stage in terms of scoring potential.
I'm with you there, Dan, in terms of the upside. I'd be going Bennell and just his scoring potential. He's averaged over 95 across 4 seasons before, so that's not something to be sniffed at. And once his game time starts to go up, he could really prove to be a proven on-field scorer, and he probably has better job security than Rivers as well. Maybe a couple of bad games from Rivers, and he could be out for maybe a Michael Hibbert.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. They have had this week a couple of injuries. Melbourne, one of them was Marty Hoare. So a few less defenders to call on, which might keep his job safe. But yeah, as you say, 1 or 2 quiet games, and as we know with these kids, what can happen. So we better wrap things up. Reminder everybody for our wonderful supporters at KFC, those prizes that they're giving away every week to the top 11 ranked teams, and based on what happened last week, anybody can claim that if the planets align. But I thought we'll just finish off with a quick bit of captain's talk, because is it just back to the old Grundy-Gawn combo, which assuming everybody plays this week, and for those of us who have the two of them, we've got Grundy plays Friday night against the Giants and then Gawn on Sunday against the Cats. So they're two pretty attractive matchups. But then you've got Lachie Neale playing Adelaide on Sunday as well.
Lock that one in.
And then, as you talked about, Dan, it sort of depends who your donut player might be as well. If it's a Gold Coast player there on Saturday night, so that should be okay. But what are you thinking?
Well, Dan's got Conroy, so he's got Comben, which is the North Melbourne. He can actually leverage that Lachie Neale into Gawn. So I'd probably go Neale into Gawn. That would be my approach, but I don't have Neale. So for me, I'm pretty limited. It's probably going to be Grundy. I was at the SB last year when he had the 170 against GWS. He kicked a goal from 75 metres, he did everything, and it was a concert. So I'll never forget that, and I've always realised that day that you always Grundy VC when you have the chance. Tomorrow night, and then most likely Max will take the honour on Sunday if needed, and I hope it's not needed because Reece Stanley has given him some grief in the past. But look, Max Gawn is on a tear at the moment, captain of that football club, and I think he's going to be safe 130 this year, most weeks, week on week, hopefully.
Stanley's injured, isn't he?
Yeah. So Stanley's actually going to miss, so it'll be Darcy Fort. So yeah, watch out. Gawn might eat him alive.
Radical, maybe.
Yeah, or Radigalia, yeah. So I'm definitely putting the whack in the sea on Gawn. Probably looking to, I'm not sure if I'm getting Neale. If I get Neale, then I'll VC him, but probably looking at Brodie Grundy if I decide to get Petrarca. Yeah,
no, I'm in the same boat. It'll be Grundy Gawn, or if I get Neale, I'll probably try and use him. I've got some unknown reason there's a Geelong donut player in my team, so I can use that on a Sunday. It'll come in handy for once on a Sunday. All right, thanks a lot, guys. It's been fantastic. Lots of Supercoach to talk about this week. It's been pretty crazy. Hopefully we get through this week with, last week was bad enough when we had Dusty out and then Lachie Neale got injured, and then, it all went pear-shaped from there. So if we can just get through a weekend without any real major bombs dropping, that would be fantastic. So good luck to everybody, and we'll catch you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, cheers.